What's going on, guys? I am the Markham Knight, and today we are doing a video on the panel that was in New York Comic Con yesterday. This was the panel that I was most excited for. It is the Geoff Johns, not the Road to Doomsday Clock, but the Doomsday Clock panel. Now at the panel they gave away something very cool, which was the first 6 pages of the actual comic book. Now, for those of you who don't know, very quick breakdown. Doomsday Clock is essentially the Watchmen within the DC universe, or the DC characters within the Watchmen universe. We don't exactly know how it's going to pan out, but it's been hinted at since the beginning of Rebirth. So it's something very cool. It's been something they've been building up for a long time. I think we should just jump into the pages, and then I can kind of talk about it a little more in depth. Also, after, I am going to analyze the Road to Doomsday Clock top 10 moments video, and I'm going to give you some information and background on that. So let's look at the first page. As you can see, it's a 9-grid panel, which is kind of the way that Watchmen was set up. So in the first panel you see here, there's a sign that says the end is here. In the Watchmen, Rorschach always used to hold up the sign that said the end is nigh. So saying the end is here means they've gotten there already. Now Geoff Johns mentioned that this was 1992. Which is important because Watchmen took place in the 80s, and this is kind of set a few years after that. So this is directly after the events of Watchmen and about 7-8 years later. So that's very, very cool. As you can see at the bottom, they are protesting in front of Ozymandias' building. We don't know exactly why yet. Geoff Johns did explain it a little more, and if we go on to the next panel, you can see they're trying to break into his building. So people are trying to get in there. As just like it was in Watchmen, you do see that there are multiple news outlets covering the stories. It's basically kind of a doomsday situation, and we don't know why as of yet, but we can keep going on to the next page and see what they're doing here. Okay, so in the fourth panel you see here, right before the big bottom one, you see a newspaper that reads "The Great Lie," and it's on Adrian Veidt's actual table. So for those of you who don't know, Adrian is the Ozymandias himself, and in Watchmen he did have the Great Lie, which was kill a whole bunch of people in New York, and it's kind of to force world peace. So Geoff Johns mentioned that now suddenly they know that Ozymandias was responsible, and they start to blame each other, the countries, for what exactly unfolded there, and for who died and who was with Ozymandias, who knew about it, who didn't know about it, and now they're without Dr. Manhattan because he did leave the planet. So it is very cool to see that everything kind of blew up in Ozymandias' face. The world's smartest man, who had set everything up to kind of force world peace, is now kind of having to backtrack and run away from what he's created, which is really, really cool. So we can move on to the next panel here. This is cool because you do see there's kind of the team that's breaking in into the actual Ozymandias building, and Geoff Johns didn't really go into detail, but on the actual thing it's kind of like medical equipment and everything, but as you see there is an x-ray up there of someone with a tumor. We don't know who this person is and what this means and who, like, what's going on here. He said a lot would be explained once we actually read the comic book. So let's move on to the next one. There is that focus on the tumor. Then we go back out to the actual news outlets talking about it. They say that nuclear war is imminent, so that it's gonna happen no matter what. They know it's gonna happen, so that's pretty cool. Next thing that you see here is a panel of a guard who's watching the video, and then someone grabs him by his neck, and as the guy grabs him, it's one of the actual inmates, and the inmate's like, "Oh, give me the keys, and let me get out." And before the guard can give him the keys, someone knocks the guard out. Who knocks the guard out? Well, you can look at the face in the bottom panel. You can see the face of the inmate. He's pretty scared of the guy who knocks him out. So this next part was really, really, really cool. I was watching the actual panel live, but I was watching it at home because I didn't go to New York Comic Con. It sold out too fast for me to get tickets in time. I was at San Diego, but this was something that I missed. I'm sorry I missed it. Rorschach, as you can see, is the guy who's back. So for those of you who don't know, at the end of Watchmen, Rorschach wanted to actually let the world know on what happened, and because of that, Dr. Manhattan had to kill him. Now, Dr. Manhattan killed him, but he's suddenly back 8 years later. We do know his diary got out, and that was how the news got out. So we thought, oh, because his diary's up there somewhere and being read by somebody, that person published the diary and all the news got out. But for some reason, Rorschach is back. So we don't know exactly why Rorschach is back and how Rorschach is back. Did Dr. Manhattan bring him back? Because Geoff Johns did say in this panel that Dr. Manhattan can do pretty much anything he wants to do. He chooses to make his own decisions. And just like that, Rorschach is back, so I'm guessing he might have had something to do with that. Maybe he felt sorry for it, maybe he didn't. We don't know exactly why, but we do know Rorschach is back now. Okay, so let's walk away from that and let's just talk about Doomsday Clock. Now, this video has been going on for a few minutes, so I'm going to make a separate video for the Road to Doomsday Clock top 10 moments, but I do want to talk about Doomsday Clock in general and Watchmen in general. So Watchmen, for those of you who didn't read the comics, it's a great comic book. You can actually watch the actual movie, and the movie will give you a lot of insight as to what it was like, because there are legitimately panel from panel taken from the actual comics into the movie. And although they didn't have the Black Freighter, which is a really, really cool story, I do believe it's in the director's cut. If you watch Zack Snyder's director's cut, not everyone loves Zack Snyder, but if you watch Watchmen, it was actually a really good movie. They did change the ending a little bit to make it nuclear war instead of the attack on New York, the way that it panned out, but that was still very cool. Everything was essentially Dr. Manhattan's fault, which is why he left the world and he went into exile. And he was on Mars when he went into exile, but it's very, very cool. So you can definitely watch that movie. Essentially, the quickest breakdown of Watchmen is Rorschach is essentially the question from DC Universe. If for those of you who do watch, do read DC, you know who the question is. He's a conspiracy theorist. He feels like there's always something bigger going on. He feels like the government's always in the wrong and something's going on there. That's essentially Rorschach. Night Owl is kind of like Batman, kind of not. And Dr. Manhattan is basically Superman, all-powerful guy who kind of handles the rest of the team. And then there's slowly deaths of many of the actual superheroes, and Rorschach is trying to track down the serial superhero killer. And it turns out at the end of that Ozymandias, and Ozymandias, if you want to compare him to someone in DC, would be Lex Luthor. And Lex Luthor, as cool as he is a dangerous person. He is the world's smartest man, and that's who Ozymandias thinks he is. And he basically sets everything up so that he can cause this big nuclear war in the movie. And in the comics, it's this attack on New York where millions of people would die, and that is set up to make it look like the world has to work together to stop Dr. Manhattan. And eventually, when Dr. Manhattan gets to know this plan, he agrees with it. He agrees that that's the only way there's world peace, the Cold War officially ending, everyone joining hands and trying to stop him. And he's okay with that, and he exiles himself. Now, we know that the world did come back to know that it was actually Adrian Veidt and not Dr. Manhattan who organized all of this, and they're trying to figure out why it was. Pieces ended, pieces crumbled, and now they're basically protesting not only Ozymandias, but they're trying to kind of get back to where they were. So that's the quick breakdown of how you intro into this. Where Superman fits into this, we don't really know. Geoff Johns in Comic-Con in San Diego did say that Superman was the story for Doomsday Clock. Personal speculation on my part, this may be a spoiler, may not be. Dr. Manhattan might look at Superman as the hope that he never was, and the hope for humanity, and try and get him to believe, will basically bring Superman to make himself believe in humanity again. That's my personal opinion. Geoff Johns also stated in this actual video, if you watch it on DC's channel, the link will be down below. In the video, Geoff Johns admitted that in the actual second issue, it will be Lex Luthor and Ozymandias working together, sitting in one room, the two smartest men of their planets legitimately in the same room, talking things over. And that's going to be awesome to see. Also, with Lex Luthor kind of on this rebirth, in Rebirth he's been the superhero and trying to be the superhero. And the newest story, although we haven't read it yet, right after Superman versus Deathstroke is supposed to be them going back to Apokolips for Lex Luthor to reclaim his throne on the throne of Apokolips, and Superman trying to get Lex Luthor in there instead of having essentially a Darkseid type takeover. So that is a very cool story, very cool panel. I will do a video later on the Road to Doomsday Clock top 10 moments. Look out for it. Otherwise, wish I was at New York Comic Con. Tell me what you guys think.
This is the Markham Knight telling you to like, comment, and subscribe.